At one point, Jordan Peterson believed he discovered the key to fixing all of his chronic health problems.
Well, I've only been eating beef, fundamentally, for almost 5 years now. I never imagined in my wildest dreams, number one, that you could just live on meat, and number two, that it would have such a salutary effect.
Unfortunately, going full carnivore failed to cure Peterson's chronic pain and anxiety. So in the years after that recording, he sought out ever more speculative remedies. In late 2025, his daughter Michaela announced on social media that Peterson had been hospitalized for pneumonia and sepsis, and he has yet to return to public life.
Dad was in an ICU suffering from pneumonia and sepsis.
This is the second video in a series where I am investigating the allure of regenerative medicine, the idea that the right mix of stem cells, peptides, exosomes, and assorted scientific-sounding health tonics can reverse inscrutable chronic diseases.
What I believe is you have 3.2 trillion cells or so in your body, and I believe they're working for you, but we have to figure out and give it the right signals so that you can heal disease.
The promises are astounding, so too are the risks. The largely unregulated field promotes the belief in an almost phoenix-like rebirth after their customers purchase any number of poorly studied treatments.
The simplest way to explain that is it's the opposite of degeneration.
However, in the cases where something goes wrong, those very clinics are shielded from ever having to report complications, even when they involve the deaths of patients. Now, in the first video in this series, I showed how the most influential functional medicine doctor in the world, Mark Hyman, traveled to a regenerative medicine clinic in Mexico that he promoted on his show called Eterna Health, and then, shortly thereafter, almost died of sepsis. If you're just tuning in now, you might want to go back and check it out before you watch this one. After all, seeing that video might give you some context for why Michaela Peterson wrote me this colorful note on Instagram. Expect a letter from our lawyer. Way to capitalize on my dad's neurological illness for clicks, you absolute psychopath. Then again, if you just want to skip that investigation because you want to know what is happening with Jordan Peterson, well, you're in the right place.
Now, you're going to treat me for something tomorrow, as I understand it. So
Yes.
Exactly what are you planning to do to me?
If you haven't heard of him, Jordan Peterson is a controversial clinical psychologist who waded into the culture wars in 2016 and gained notoriety for climate denialism, a stance against woke ideology, and what he calls classical liberalism. His books and lectures set him up as a conservative thought leader, and he became the intellectual guiding light for the manosphere.
The Marxists, of course, divided the world into victim and victimizer, essentially on economic grounds. The difference now is that same narrative seems to play out. There are victims and there are victimizers, but there is a number of dimensions along which that axis of inequality can reveal itself.
I'm not really going to go into his philosophy here, except to say that it mixes some pretty common sense advice with truly unscientific statements of faith that are difficult to untangle and sometimes hard to reconcile. More interesting to me, however, is how his 9 million social media followers, who take his word as gospel, react to his personal experimentation with various wellness Hail Marys, something that pushed his audience away from philosophical smugness and into the booming business of peptides, stem cells, fad diets, and biohacking. Peterson has been quite open about a lifetime of health problems, from autoimmune conditions to difficulty sleeping to chronic back pain, mold exposure, and a troubling reaction to benzodiazepines. Many people can relate to Jordan's sense of betrayal with Western medicine and the reason that he started seeking out more novel self-treatment.
So I asked my doctor to increase the benzodiazepine dose, but what seemed to happen as a consequence of that was that I just got more anxious. Again, in retrospect, it seems like I had a rather uncommon but not unheard of reaction to benzodiazepines.
At first, his search for relief took him outside of traditional Western medical models towards an intense focus on an all-meat diet.
There's a recent trial done for inflammatory bowel disease, which is a really terrible condition.
Yeah.
And right now, the only really medications are like methotrexate or immunosuppressants.
Carnivore diet.
Yeah, carnivore diet. It does work, actually.
From there, he went right into dangerous fringe treatments in foreign countries.
We went to Russia, of all places, near Moscow, to try a treatment offered by a clinic there that used...
They used propofol and Dextor.
Right. Propofol as a heavy sedating agent, which basically made me unconscious for 9 days.
Yeah, so you were completely out for 9 days.
A few months ago, Dr. Joseph Witt-Doering, who goes by Dr. Joseph on YouTube, produced an excellent video examining what we know about Peterson's health history and a theory for how he ended up getting sepsis.
Now, everything that's happened with Dr. Peterson has surrounded a class of medications called benzodiazepines. These are sedative medications that slow the brain down. And common benzodiazepines are things like Xanax, Klonopin, and Valium.
I stopped taking them entirely and tried ketamine, which is a treatment for depression. Well, neither of those were a very good idea as it turned out. So I had to stop taking benzodiazepines entirely.
Joseph pulls on recent clinical research into benzodiazepine withdrawal that shows how prolonged use can create a rare reaction that decimates a person's physical condition.
And the condition that he's experiencing is a condition called BIND. It stands for Benzodiazepine-Induced Neurological Dysfunction. And essentially, it's a type of neurotoxicity that happens when you take benzodiazepines long-term. This does not happen in everyone, but there is a substantial minority of patients where this drug actually hurts their brain over time, and they get sicker, almost like a chemotherapy or some kind of toxic reaction. It actually damages neurons and people feel sicker over time.
For Peterson, 4 years of benzodiazepine use transformed into akathisia, which he described as being stabbed with a knife all day long. In 2020, he checked into a hospital in Toronto, and when he didn't feel like he was making any progress, he tried something even more radical. This conversation with his daughter, Michaela, explains the lengths that Peterson was willing to go to in order to seek relief.
They weren't willing, because of your akathisia, which was making you crazy, they weren't willing to slow taper you down. They just wanted to stabilize you by keeping the benzodiazepines there. So Andre and I found a clinic in Russia that would actually put you to sleep using propofol so you wouldn't have to suffer while they took the benzodiazepines out. And doing a detox.
Or suffer as much.
Oh, at least you'd be unconscious for that period of time. And doing a detox on benzodiazepines isn't recommended. You're supposed to do a slow taper. But your akathisia was so bad that even staying at the same dose was dangerous.
Right.
So we needed to get rid of that. So we spent time in Russia, managed to get it out, and it was horrible.
Well, you guys took a big risk taking me out of the hospital in Toronto, which nobody recommended. The psychiatrists certainly weren't in favor of it. And taking me somewhere as foreign as Moscow and then attempting this, generally unadvised treatment, was all surreal.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
And when I woke up, so as I said too, that was complicated by the fact that I had developed pneumonia in both lungs. But when I woke up, I was first catatonic and then delirious. I can remember the delirium that lasted a whole day consisted of a sort of dreamlike hallucination that I had been kidnapped.
While going against his medical team's advice is troubling, I also understand the impulse for someone to jump ship when they feel like they have no other options. The problem with evidence-based medicine is that, by and large, most medical evidence only points to partial or unsatisfying outcomes. While many acute symptoms will reduce over time, the reality is that evidence rarely points to magic bullets. And the idea of skipping out on painful side effects with a medically induced coma, well, it just sounds enticing. And in this case, his treatment even sort of appeared to work. Peterson recovered enough from his withdrawal to return to public life, but he did continue to have chronic problems. Then in 2025, Michaela Peterson dropped a bombshell on Peterson fans.
Dad was in an ICU suffering from pneumonia and sepsis after dealing with a host of neurological issues this summer that we believe stem from CIRS, which is chronic inflammatory response syndrome due to decades of mold exposure. We don't have a better explanation for his neurological symptoms at the moment other than spiritual attacks.
Remember that last line.
Spiritual attacks.
Because it's important. Michaela sees a supernatural element to her father's illness and tacks on an additional, it's a fringe medical theory of mold exposure. Now, on his part, Dr. Joseph more or less ignores Michaela's explanation and instead suggests that all these symptoms really do come back to bind the original benzodiazepine cause.
I've seen this with some of my patients where after they get benzo injured and then nervous system is sensitized, they start reacting, you could start reacting to mold, you can start reacting to different types of foods and things like that. And so he may have been able to handle this before, but now it's affecting him at a much greater level. That's my speculation.
On her part, Michaela Peterson is adamant that Joseph's idea is wrong. On Twitter, she wrote, "This isn't about akathisia or medication. He's not on any medication. It's an immune system dysfunction, CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome." Again, she states that only their idiosyncratic strategies have helped him so far. Only eating meat helped keep the symptoms under control, but it hasn't been enough recently, she wrote. Okay, so we got to talk about all meat diets for a second.
I'm going to attempt to eat my body weight in testicles today.
The internet has been fascinated with them for a long time, and personally, I've heard a mix of things about their various rates of effectiveness for treating autoimmune conditions. I mean, the problem that all humans face collectively is that at some point we reach limits with what medical science actually knows, and yet we are still stuck dealing with the same symptoms that we've collected over a lifetime. It can make us feel desperate, and in Peterson's case, at least some of those symptoms originate from inside the evidence-based recommendations of Big Pharma itself. Benzodiazepines. And here's the thing with alternative treatments, sometimes people feel relief from just changing up their habits. It's something that I've written about extensively in my book, The Wedge, where you can actually increase the effectiveness of the placebo effect by sticking to a highly specific alternative routine, regardless of whatever the actual routine is. I mean, you could get the same bump if you designed a program around an all-meat diet or spiritual warfare or a fungal infection regimen. Simple adherence to a new medical paradigm can sometimes help all on its own, but that doesn't mean that it's always enough. It's no surprise that alternative treatments, well, they also fail. To some degree, getting well, even in evidence-based medicine, is a game of trial and error, and the more vague or disparate the symptoms are, the higher the rate of error, which is a long way to bring this back to Peterson's actual recent hospitalization, the one that still has him out of commission. When all other options failed him, Peterson pursued a series of pseudo-medical balms. Activating his network of celebrity contacts and internet-famous wellness influencers, he embarked on a whole cornucopia of alternative treatments, both inside and outside the public eye. Here is Peterson discussing his health with the regenerative medicine doctor Adeel Khan in a video with the hopeful title, "You Don't Have to Live with Chronic Pain," from December 29th, 2023, shortly after he came back from Russia and about a year or year and a half before he came down with sepsis. I think this video is key to understanding Peterson's condition, and I want to look at two different sections with you. The first explains Peterson's own idiosyncratic approach to treating his illness. He asks Khan, who is the doctor who I've previously connected to the treatment that caused Mark Hyman's own case of sepsis in my last video. to discuss the difference between functional medicine and the traditional Western medicine that got him hooked on benzodiazepines.
Allopathic medicine is traditional medical doctorate. You get a doctorate of medicine, and that's the traditional, drug-based, surgical-based interventions that we learn in medical school. So, which is great.
Right. So disease treatment.
Disease treatment.
Yeah.
But then functional medicine and integrative medicine is taking naturopathic stuff that's evidence-based, that has actual science behind it, and lifestyle measurements to intervene and treat chronic disease. So,
I went to the Temple of Asclepius in Greece recently. Yeah, it was extremely interesting, a very large compound. And at the Temple of Asclepius, there were rooms where you could, they actually had people sit and dream in rooms full of snakes.
Did you catch that? Kahn was talking about a scientific basis for functional medicine to bridge the gap between Western medicine and wellness. And then Peterson has gone all the way over to wellness being at least sometimes about sleeping with snakes. And I'm just beside myself watching Kahn trying to keep this conversation on track.
Right, and God only knows what the reason for that was. My daughter used to have snakes as pets, and she said that she would often have nightmares as a consequence of having the snakes in her room, and I suspect it had something to do with their odor. So God only knows what dreaming with snakes would produce in terms of visions.
Again, just watch Kahn's reactions here.
But anyways, there was a place set up where you could have a healing vision. But there were also theaters and stadia there, and places for massage and for saunas, essentially. Like, it was a compound that was devoted to health, that was multidimensional. Right. So, and there were theaters there because part of the healing process was drama, and part of it was exercise, and part of it was vision. And when I went to that temple, I thought, these people were more sophisticated than we are in their approach to disease, right? Because it wasn't merely a matter of, I know there are modern medical miracles, and certainly surgical bone setting and that kind of thing, hip replacements and so forth. Some of the things that can be done are absolutely miraculous. But our notion of what constitutes health and how to progress towards it, I don't think it's certainly not as sophisticated as what the ancient Greeks managed at their height.
Ask yourself this. Do you think Peterson is thinking straight in this video? I mean, to me, he sounds like someone desperately on a search for any lifeline to alleviate his painful symptoms. It's an entirely reasonable reaction to years of pain, which is where this gets so weird. Because Kahn actually tries to agree with him by pivoting to common wellness complaints about the broken Western medical system.
No, and I believe in 30 years, we're going to look back on this era and be like, wow, we did a lot wrong. And the reason is because, just as I was saying, we realize now that the system is broken.
I don't actually believe that Kahn really believes that in 30 years, we will look back on Greek snake dreaming and think that they were onto something. But that doesn't stop Kahn from pulling Peterson into his clinical orbit. And this next section, I think it might be the most important part of this entire interview because it explains the root cause of Peterson's decline. Now, listen closely.
Now, you're going to treat me for something tomorrow, as I understand. And so exactly what are you planning to do to me?
Well, as you have talked about publicly, you have toxic mold. You've been exposed to it, right? And I think in Florida.
That's the theory.
Yeah, that's the theory. And so what happens with toxic mold is it kind of hijacks your immune system and makes it difficult for your immune system to function properly. And so what we did for you the first time was we did intravenous stem cells, which is to help your body to build some resiliency and to strengthen.
Right, and that was different than the Tammy did that as well, but she also did the exosome treatment, which I didn't do.
Yes, yeah. Because your problem's more systemic. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to do what are called intravenous natural killer cells. And natural killer cells, as we talked about earlier, are the cells in your innate immune system that can kill it can kill cancer, it can kill chronic fungal infections, which is kind of what happens with mold.
So right here, Peterson described how Kahn was going to become his doctor and do a whole array of different treatments. And you'll remember that this Adeel Kahn also treated Mark Hyman with stem cells right before Hyman was admitted to 2 different hospitals with sepsis and then almost died. Yeah, that's the whole theme of this series.
And in a closed space of the spine, it just took off. And very quickly, within a couple of days, I couldn't walk. Within a week, I had surgery. They opened me up. They closed me up because They couldn't reach the abscess. It was on the front. And they said, we can't do anything, and basically left me to die. Gave me antibiotics and said, cross your fingers and here's some painkillers. And
they said there was no cure.
Both Hyman and Kahn talked about the specific treatment regimen that they were undertaking, and it's reasonably similar to what Peterson was doing.
Well, the main reason I'm seeing Dr. Kahn is to deal with chronic disc degeneration and disc herniation.
So we injected them epidurally using catheters. We also injected them into the facet joints.
In his 2023 conversation with Kahn, Peterson seemed to be willing to go all in on whatever Kahn suggested. Here they are talking about fecal transplants.
We'd probably give you the FMT as well, so we can give you your...
And FMT is
the fecal microbial transplant.
Oh, yes.
Because then your body, again, we're strengthening your immune system and we're building resiliency for you to deal with these chronic infections in your body.
It sort of feels like what Kahn is really offering is just to throw a bunch of clinical spaghetti medicine at the wall and hope that some of these alleviate Peterson's symptoms. But the problem with getting more and more treatments is that sometimes just getting treatments can be dangerous, just in and of themselves. And according to the FDA, for instance, sepsis is indeed a possible outcome of a fecal transplant, which is not shocking since fecal transplants are literally moving poop from one person to another. So here we have a case of two different well-known health influencers, both coming down with sepsis after taking treatments from Adeel Khan. Is it possible that something that Khan does in his clinic, maybe it's poor preparations or shoddy stem cell lines or some other factor, connects their two cases? When I began reporting on this 2 months ago, that seemed like the most plausible explanation. Indeed, in the next video in this series, it's all about Kahn's clinic and the over-promising and under-delivering of regenerative medicine. But in Peterson's case, actually, there seems to be an even more troubling explanation than what I had anticipated. While Peterson didn't post about his ongoing treatments with Kahn again on his channel, his daughter Michaela actually had Kahn on 2 more times on her channel after that father introduction. And she has continued to post shorts with Kahn as recently as May 2nd, 2025, just a few months before her father was admitted to the hospital with sepsis that July.
When you take healthy young poop, literally from like a healthy young mice, and put it into old mice who are on the end stage of their life, it can actually extend the lifespan of the old mice.
That's crazy.
I reached out to Jordan and Michaela Peterson on several different occasions because I wanted to know what they thought of my sepsis theory. And well, actually, Michaela got back to me with several emails, and I just want to read to you what she said. Dad's sepsis was definitely a complication of pneumonia and intubation in Switzerland. It came as a secondary problem to pneumonia. I had a few treatments, no stem cells, with Dr. Kahn, and Dad never got FMT treatment or fecal transplant from Dr. Kahn, but he did have elbow stem cell injections, which he said helped to help his elbow stiffness. My mom had wrist stem cell injections that she said helped too. So the whole family, who talks about their various chronic health problems on their channels all the time, well, they were going to Kahn for all sorts of things. However, she maintains that her father's condition was at its heart neurological and not related to Kahn's treatments. Now, I asked her what she thought caused the pneumonia, and her answer, it was revealing. I can't explain what he's sick with quite yet. I think we're going to announce it this week, though, but the whole sepsis pneumonia seemed to be bad luck, maybe just because he's so sick already. I also need to make a correction. He didn't have a stem cell treatment with Dr. Kahn last summer. I forgot it was with someone who we had connected with through Tony Robbins.
I think Dr. Kahn is absolutely brilliant practitioner.
But definitely not Dr. Kahn. That's important. His stem cell treatment with Kahn was years before, like the podcast said. And then he also had that stem cell elbow injection at some point after that, maybe 2024. Apologies for the confusion. Lots of doctors this year to keep track of, but nope, no Kahn over the summer preceding the sepsis. Definitely unrelated. That's a lot of information, and the Peterson team is going to give an update soon, maybe around the time that this video drops. Importantly, though, according to Michaela, whatever complications arose are most likely not directly related to Kahn's expanded network of high-end celebrity clinics. But what stands out here is that the Petersons are still incredibly devoted to the speculative and experimental treatment pathways. You see here, this is the sports code of future Scott. I'm breaking in because as I was going to press, Michaela Peterson watched that first video in the series and was decidedly unhappy with my reporting, writing that I should, quote, expect a letter from our lawyer. Way to capitalize on my dad's neurological illness for clicks, you absolute psychopath. Now, I felt like that was a little unfair, especially since her most popular video in the last few years has literally been monetizing her father's illness for clicks. This is from her first update on her father's illness, which now has 3.9 million views, which includes a plug for a book tour and the Peterson Academy.
He's hopefully recovering. And like I said, I'll keep people updated. He has a team of people, including myself, continuing his mission, including Peterson Academy, and will be releasing his We Who Wrestle with God tour to everyone on YouTube, which he's wanted to do for a long time. And given we think there's a spiritual element at play here, we believe the right way to fight back is to keep going and push harder, if anything.
And look, getting threats like this isn't new to me or my channel. I mean, a year or so ago, I went to court to defend my cat from government overreach.
Because my cat got arrested. Well, my cat got me taken to court. Oh my God. Let me explain.
Ichabod, however, remains free. And right around the same time, AG1 hired one of the most powerful legal teams in the country to try to shut down my reporting on their scammy green powder. Those didn't work out. Obviously, she hadn't seen this video yet because it wasn't out yet because I'm recording it right now. Anyway, at the time that I'm recording, which is on March 25th, I haven't seen any legal letters. That said, I reminded her that I take ethics around reporting seriously, so I wrote her back this. Everything in that video adheres to what you wrote me. Please let me know what I said that was factually inaccurate and I will make a correction. Happy to put you in touch with my legal team if that is the direction you want to take. Now, we went back and forth a couple more times until she finally blocked me on Instagram, and you can pause to read that exchange here. So I guess we will see where all of that goes. Anyway, I think the whole point of covering Peterson is both clear and relevant to the theme of the series. Peterson's trip through poorly regulated and mostly unaccountable clinics didn't stop at Kahn's brew of stem cells and peptides and fecal transplants and exosomes, but extended into a network of off-book doctors that originate ultimately from celebrity recommendations, not medical experts. Peterson has seen so many doctors that she has had a hard time keeping track of them all. Her father's ultimate admission to a hospital for pneumonia and sepsis is, at the very least, a testament to the fact that, just like the mainstream interventions that failed him, the experimental ones did too. And this is maybe the real story here. It's one thing to point to one potentially bad actor in a space that is barely regulated. It's another to explore an entire regenerative medical industry that maintains a veneer of medical credibility and shiny glass offices, while it has no accountability outside of whether or not its services create a reliable stream of revenue. It's easy to forget that American hospitals are supervised by the FDA, and they have to file reports that account for all of their patient outcomes, both the good and the bad. Now, this is the very reason that we have reliable statistics that show that almost 200,000 people die from medical mistakes in hospital care in America every year. And just to quote one recent study, medical errors have a high cost, with some experts estimating adverse events costing the healthcare system $20 billion each year, and others approximating healthcare costs of $35.7 to $45 billion annually for hospital-acquired infections alone. That's terrifying information. It's the sort of statement that would make anyone want to run away from the mainstream medical industry towards any other bastion of credible health treatments. But now let's just consider the per capita number for people who die of unapproved health treatments from clinics that have negligible regulatory standards to adhere to. Oh, wait. We can't actually consider that number because no one is reporting on them. We literally have no idea how dangerous these treatments actually are. All we know is that when bad things happen, neither doctors nor the influencers who recommend them in the first place will say a single thing about any of it. it's almost as if, so long as nobody is watching, that we are supposed to believe that there aren't any problems, which has got to be some sort of mental condition all of its own. It's like if you ignore something, maybe because you've ignored it, it's actually good for you. It's at least a logical fallacy of some sort. But then sometimes the rubber does meet the road. The stories do leak out. And here's one example. Here was a comment by someone on my channel when I released that first video. I had 3 cases last decade I assisted with on autopsies where patients had been to Mexico for surgeries that were either denied here, they're cosmetic and they had a rotten cardiovascular health, and one woman's aorta, yikes, or went from procedures not available here in Canada, like MS treatments. Okay, so what that comment was saying is that he had 3 cases of people who died, because these were autopsies, because they went to Mexico to seek out these unapproved and unregulated treatments. And yeah, I know that's just a comment, but that's hardly the only case. The actual medical literature is full of case studies of people who met the same fates. In the next video, I'm going to take this story right to Khan and the regenerative wellness industry itself. What do we really know about how Khan runs his practice? Do stem cell peptide exosome fecal transplant therapies offer any real clinical benefit? I mean, there are scientific papers out there. Or are they little more than snake oil wrapped up in plausible medical explanations? Was Hyman's case a fluke, a sort of chance mistake? Or is there a systematic problem with the facilities they go to? Well, I've spent several months digging up answers to exactly these questions. And I've also reached out to Khan several times directly. And maybe his answers through his lawyers are more telling than anything else, because they've made it very clear that they do not want me digging any further. They even denied that Khan gave either man any stem cell injections, in apparent contradiction to their own public statements. So, what is Khan really hiding? Coming up next, the degenerative medicine of Adeel Khan. Blazer Scott cutting in here. Quick note, after releasing the first video in this series, I have gotten a lot of feedback and leads, and of course, Michaela's legal threat. And it might take me a little longer than I had anticipated to get the next video out, because there is just so much information that I need to comb through now. But know that I'm working on it, and we'll be posting updates as I go in the notes section on YouTube and also over on Substack. So, help join the investigation and see where this goes. I'm really excited to get into that next video, because it actually raises much bigger issues than just these sort of small individual patient complications that I've been dealing with so far. But I felt like I needed to set this up with a real faces before we talked about that other clinic. But before I go, I just want to say, on my outro, 3 years ago, I took this massive leap of faith on YouTube, and I left behind this pretty good career in mainstream media. Now, I wrote for some of the world's top magazines, and I published 6 books, but now I'm a fully crowd-funded guy here on YouTube. And to be honest, that whole movement was terrifying. But lately, honestly, just like in the last couple of months, I feel like I've gotten my feet underneath me, and I've grown from some of you people who've been here for years, I had 1,000 followers, now there's over 200,000 of you. And in an era where the traditional media landscape seems to be crumbling, you guys have helped me build a bastion of independent deep dive reporting. One thing that I really like about this channel and the way I do this is that I sort of put these investigations out while they're still ongoing. And, like anything that a human does, sometimes I make mistakes, and then I can correct my mistakes sort of live, and I post corrections, and I sort of give you an inside view into that process here on YouTube in the posts, and you'll see comments and stuff like that. And I actually have found that to be a really refreshing way to do journalism. So it's not just one step out where I publish something once and that was it. I'm actually able to work with you guys, read your comments, and change, which really affects my reporting. So thank you for all of that. And if you aren't part of this, the inner circle, my team yet, I'd like to invite you to join my free newsletter. and you can find me on Substack. It's sgcarney.substack.com. And, if there's a premium part to that, and thank you for all of you who donate to this channel. It means so much that you are here and you're really part of this. I actually feel like we're doing something together, and it's really exciting for me. So until next time, from Fox Swiss Inc. in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Investigates. Thank you so much to my supporters here on Patreon and on Substack and even on YouTube who make this work possible. It means the world to me that you're here. And if you want to get your name on the honor roll, all you need to do is sign up at the links down below. From Foxtopus Inc. in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Investigates.